Is it safe to say that the Irish are back after they crushed Purdue 66-7? No, probably not. They still got a long way to go, but they definitely took a big step in the right direction on Saturday and showed signs of a team that is capable of making a run. That's next.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast, and I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. I'm a Notre Dame alum and producer at Fox Sports, and I am thrilled to have you here on Monday, September 16th, and thanks for starting your week right here by making this your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, and you can watch every episode on YouTube as well. I'd really appreciate it if you would take a second to like this video and subscribe if you are watching on YouTube, or rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast if that's how you're tuning in today. And today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Go to 5hourenergy.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. That was fun, huh? After a long week of disappointment, frustration, and even embarrassment, Notre Dame shocked everybody for the second week in a row, but this time around, they were on the good side of it. The Irish blew out their in-state rival Purdue 66-7 in Ross-Ade Stadium. Let that sink in for a second here. 66-7. Purdue has been playing football for 137 years, and nobody in that 137-year history has ever beaten the Boilermakers as bad as Notre Dame did on Saturday. They reduced Purdue to a JV high school team. It was embarrassing. And yeah, Purdue's probably not that good, but for Notre Dame to do that against a Power 4 team is impressive no matter how you want to slice it. It was a truly stunning turn of events that literally nobody saw coming. That was the most dominant performance I can remember against a Power 4 team, and man, did they need it. We needed it, honestly. Like, as a fan base, I feel like we needed a stress-free Saturday for the first time in what feels like forever, and the Irish needed to deliver a performance like that to show the rest of the world that what happened against Northern Illinois wasn't going to happen again. Now, does this blowout win make up for that loss? Absolutely not. That's going to haunt this team and Marcus Freeman for a long time unless they make a run in this year's college football playoff. I think if they do that, then people could just chalk up the NIU thing as a fluke and we could get over it. And if you are one of those people who became even more frustrated about that game because of the way that Notre Dame looked against Purdue, I don't blame you. I get it, but I think that for today and the way I want to approach this game and the show is to be a little bit more optimistic. And if you're a friend of mine, you probably don't ever really think of me as a super optimistic person. Usually I'm a bit of a pessimist, especially when it comes to Notre Dame football. But in this case, I feel like, look, the Northern Illinois, it happened. It's in the rear view. There's nothing that Notre Dame can do to change that. Their hopes are still alive. Everything that they wanted to achieve is still attainable. And even though I have my doubts about whether they're going to actually do it, I think it's kind of a fool's errand to just stress over that Northern Illinois game any longer because there's just nothing that's going to happen that's going to change it. So if they are going to have any chance of getting back on track and making a run this year, they had to win on Saturday, and they did that going away. So today, I'm going to go over how Notre Dame was able to have so much success against Purdue, what they can take away from this game and apply to the rest of the season. And then we do have to talk about the injuries in segment 3 because they really were the only bad thing to come out of this game, but they could have a pretty big impact down the road. So here's how it happened. And I've just got some numbers to throw at you, and every single one seems more impressive than the other, in my opinion. But let's go through it here. Notre Dame outgained Purdue by 418 total yards. Notre Dame had 580. Purdue had 162. I feel confident that if Notre Dame decided to run their starting defense out for the entire second half as opposed to bringing in their entire second team and even their third team at points, Purdue would not have gained over 100 total yards. That's insane. Notre Dame also had more third down conversions than Purdue had first downs, period. Notre Dame finished 7 of 12 on third down. Purdue had 6 first downs total, and Purdue finished 1 of 12 on third downs. It was a dominant effort by the Notre Dame defense. And the Irish had 364 rushing yards on 43 attempts, which averaged out to a whopping 8.5 yards per carry. Notre Dame also stayed disciplined throughout. They only committed 5 penalties, had 0 turnovers. Meanwhile, they won the turnover battle 2-0 because Boubacar Traore had a pick 6, which was awesome for him. He had a breakout game. More on that in a second. Kingston Viliamu-Asa had his first career interception as well. And there were several top performers that I want to highlight here real quick. Jeremiah Love, 10 carries, 109 yards, and a touchdown. That touchdown run he had very early on in the game was sort of like a collective sigh of relief from the Notre Dame fan base, where it's like, okay, like Notre Dame really needed to score on that opening drive. They got the ball first because Purdue deferred. And then, for all the angst and anxiety the fan base has had about the Notre Dame offense, for them to just go right down the field and score, that was really, really nice in that moment, and they never took their foot off the gas. Jadarian Price also had a big game, 8 carries, 86 yards, and a touchdown. Jason Onye had a big day, 4 tackles, 1.5 sacks, pass deflection. I mentioned Boubacar Traore, breakout game for him coming in for Jordan Botelho. I'll talk more about Botelho's injury in segment 3. KVA, big game as well. Several other key defenders in the first team and the second team all had standout performances. And then there was the quarterbacks. Riley Leonard only played one half. He finished 11 of 16 passing, 112 pass yards, 11 carries for 100 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. Again, all in just one half of football. Steve Angeli came in and he started out the second half. He had a good day through the air, 6 of 9 passing, 100 passing yards, and 2 touchdowns. He had the first and second passing touchdown for a Notre Dame quarterback this year, which I'm sure Notre Dame fans loved. He also had a nice 29-yard run on that little pin and pull play that they love, so he got to show off the wheels a little bit. Kenny Minchie had his first career touchdown, a 7-yard rush, and CJ Carr made his debut, although he just handed the ball off when he was out there at the very end. And just imagine for a second if someone had told you before the game that Steve Angeli would start the second half and all 4 quarterbacks would play. I imagine the reactions would be strong. None of them particularly positive, but that's exactly what happened in this game, and it was overwhelmingly positive. So the big question about this game, the quarterback position, is do you feel more confident in Riley Leonard to lead this team the rest of the way after the performance he put together on Saturday? Personally, I do. I feel a lot better about Riley Leonard now than I did before. Now, 2 things can be true, because I think that this game showed that Steve Angeli absolutely should have come in during the second half against Northern Illinois, because Riley Leonard was clearly hurt. We know this because when he's healthy, Notre Dame likes to run him a lot, and he's very effective when he runs the ball. Notre Dame elected to not run Riley Leonard pretty much at all after he suffered an apparent shoulder injury during the first half against Northern Illinois. And I think at this point, it's pretty clear you can win games with Steve Angeli, and he could have won Notre Dame the game in the second half against Northern Illinois. But I don't want to harp on that too much. And I think if you're in the boat that you want Steve Angeli to start, really there's nothing from that game that's going to change your mind. I'm not really trying to change your mind. I'm just going to express how I feel about the situation, because I have more faith in Riley Leonard. I think that the coaching staff has a lot of confidence that Riley Leonard is the guy who can take this team to another level. Does he need to improve his passing? Absolutely. And can Notre Dame win games if they decided to start Steve Angeli? Absolutely. But the expectation going into the season, and the expectation still, is for Notre Dame to make a run in the college football playoff. I have my doubts that they're capable of doing that today, but the staff clearly believes that Riley Leonard is the quarterback they need to take them to those heights. They believe that Steve Angeli can win them games, but if they want to make a real dent and make a real run at this, they believe that Riley Leonard is the quarterback who's going to do it. And I get it. I know we all want to see more from Riley Leonard as a passer, but we should appreciate just how good he is as a runner. He had 3 touchdown runs and a half, and every single one was impressive, but none more than that 34-yard run where he went to his left, shed off a couple tackles, and then somehow managed to stay in bounds, go upfield, and then just stiff-armed a Purdue defender into the turf on his way to a touchdown. He forced 6 missed tackles in one half. He had 51 yards after contact. Plus, his presence in the backfield creates holes for the other running backs because the defense has to take him into account. So when he carries out that read option, even if the ball was always going to go to the running back, the defense has to worry about Riley Leonard, and that's going to move linebackers. It's going to move their eyes from the linebackers back to the safeties as well, and that creates problems for opposing defenses. And that little bit of hesitation can create more lanes and more running room for the Notre Dame running backs, who we know are really, really good. Like, there is a good case to be made that Notre Dame has one of the best 1-2 running back tandems in the entire country with Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. And then you add in Riley Leonard and his running ability into that backfield, and it's really, really hard to stop. Now, Northern Illinois was able to stop it because Riley Leonard was hurt. But if Riley Leonard is able to run like that every game, this offense is going to be able to run the ball on pretty much every single team that they play, and they're going to be very hard to stop. But odds are he's not going to be able to run like that against every team, like against the best defenses that Notre Dame is going to play, they are going to have to pass the ball. And that is when we need to see more from Riley Leonard in the passing game. It's a work in progress. And I think those missed reps from the spring and the summer are clearly impacting him at the start of the season. It does not seem like he has a ton of trust in his wide receivers right now. They don't always seem to be in sync, and I think that is going to develop in time. But I thought it was really telling after the game when Riley Leonard talked about this past week, and he was very candid about how much it sucked for him and how down he was. But he said that Marcus Freeman met with him every single day and stressed him that he was the guy. The Notre Dame coaching staff had full faith in him that he was going to lead this team and get them to where they wanted to go. He had more meetings with Mike Denbrock to go over what he liked, what he didn't like, so that they could get on the same page as well, because remember, this is his first year in a system. They're kind of learning each other as they go. Riley Leonard wasn't able to practice all that much, so they are learning some things on the fly during the start of the season, and I admit I probably underestimated how impactful that missed time would be to him specifically at the start of this year. But the coaching staff sees Riley Leonard and Steve Angeli every single day in practice. They see him in meetings. They see way more from both of them than any of us on the outside do. And don't get me wrong, Steve Angeli was impressive. But the fact that the coaching staff continues to emphasize to Riley Leonard and the rest of the team that he is the guy to lead them. And we saw flashes of why they went out and they got him in the portal on Saturday. What he's able to do with his legs is really, really impressive, and he is absolutely a weapon. If Notre Dame really wanted to, they probably could have just kept Riley Leonard in the second half and just tried to throw it all over the field to try to get the passing game going. And I think on one hand, that makes sense, right? Because they obviously have some things they need to work on. They could have basically used the second half as a borderline practice to try to make some advancements in the passing game, but that also wouldn't make sense given the fact that we do know Riley Leonard is recovering from an injury. And they decided to sit him. They let Steve Angeli come in. He threw those two passing touchdowns, and he looked good out there. But I think that as this defense especially continues to dominate teams, as long as they're able to do that, the offense is going to have a little bit more time to figure things out. And there are very few quarterbacks in the country, if any, who can run like Riley Leonard can. So if he can just get his passing to where it needs to be, then he will literally be impossible to stop. And that's why Notre Dame is keeping him out there. And they clearly believe they can get the most out of him and help him along the way. They believe that they can do it, or else if they didn't, they would have just already gone to Steve Angeli at this point, because he's proven that he is a capable quarterback. So if you have doubts about whether or not Riley Leonard can throw the ball effectively, I don't blame you. Right now, it looks like he's not all the way there yet. He's not super confident. And yes, I saw that screenshot that was going around on Twitter. Personally, I kind of hate those where it's just a screenshot and you can clearly see there's a wide open receiver downfield. I'm not disputing that at all. But the context of the situation there is important. It was 3rd and 2. Riley Leonard was rolling right. He had already tucked in. He just was looking to get the first down, which he got with ease. If he stopped, turned and tried to throw the ball downfield, could have been a touchdown? Maybe. And did he miss Bo Collins and that touchdown pass earlier in the game? Yes, but he also tripped on Anthony Knapp, who got blown off the ball there and just was in his way. So it was an unfortunate series. It was an unfortunate just circumstance for Riley Leonard in that scenario. And yes, I do believe it's a concern that he still has not thrown a touchdown pass through 3 games. But the fact that the coaching staff continues to believe in him and they are going all in on this guy, I think shows you what he's doing behind the scenes that we aren't seeing. And it gives me a little bit more confidence that he is eventually going to figure this out, because he's done it before. Like, if you watch his tape at Duke, he could throw the ball. Was he always accurate? No, not all the time. That was one of my concerns when Notre Dame got him in the transfer portal. But we've seen him make big-time throws. As recently as last year when he was the quarterback at Duke, he was kind of picking apart Florida State while he was dealing with an injury. Then he had to miss the rest of the game. Florida State ended up coming back and won. So he's at least proven that he can do it. Once he's able to do it in the Notre Dame uniform and he puts it all together, if he's healthy and he's running like he did on Saturday and he can start passing the ball to his wide receivers downfield and he gets a healthy Mitchell Evans back playing all the time, that could be scary. And I think that is the reason why he continues to go out there and Notre Dame is putting all of their faith in him to lead this team going forward. Okay, if there's one thing I feel the most confident that will translate from this game to the future, it's the dominance of the Notre Dame defense. That's what we expected from this group going into the season, and they delivered on Saturday. More on that right after this. Today's episode is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy. 5-Hour Energy fixes tired fast. Whether you have a long list to do for work or a long list of DIY projects to tackle at home, take a 5-Hour Energy shot so you can check everything off your list. If you're like me, you always have a long list of things to do, and when you get your supplies for the next project you need or you need to knock out that to-do list, do not forget the most essential supply, which is a 5-Hour Energy shot. With zero sugar and a convenient portable size, it is the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5-Hour Energy website has flavors galore, like watermelon, tropical burst, grape, berry, and more. There really is a flavor for everyone, and you can try them all. On the site, you even have the option to build your own 12-pack or 24-pack. You choose the flavors, and it is delivered right to your door. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5-Hour Energy product today, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. So I'll admit, I was pretty critical of Notre Dame's defense after the loss to Northern Illinois. Yes, I understand that they only gave up 16 points in the game, and the offense certainly didn't do much to help them out with the way they constantly were going like 3 and out or 4 and out. They still got pushed off the ball, and they gave up 190 rushing yards to Northern Illinois. Plus, they just could not get off the field in big-time third-down situations. Ethan Hampton is not a very good quarterback, in my opinion, and he was making some big-time throws. I'll give him that. But Notre Dame needed to step up and make some plays on third down, and they just didn't do it enough on defense in that game. But going into the Purdue game, I said it before, I felt confident that they would bounce back, but I didn't expect this. This was an absolutely incredible performance from the Notre Dame defense from start to finish. Like, this is the type of defense that we expected to see from the Irish this year, and this looked like one of the best groups in the country. They looked really good against Texas A&M throughout the game. They had a lot of mistakes with the offsides and then a couple pass interference penalties, but they looked really, really good in that game. And you're starting to think, okay, that's what we expected, but it wasn't full-scale dominance like it was against Purdue. They made life living hell for Hudson Card. And for all the talk about how good he looked against Indiana State, he was awful in this game. But I don't even blame him because he had Notre Dame defenders in his backfield all day long. Pro Football Focus credits Notre Dame with 17 pressures, and that's actually not enough because Pro Football Focus can only attribute one pressure for one player on each play. So if one guy gets in the backfield, that doesn't account for like 2 or 3 more guys who could be in the backfield. And Notre Dame was in there all day long. Al Golden was dialing up blitzes left and right. And sometimes when he wasn't dialing up blitzes, Notre Dame was still getting pressure with 4 guys. They had 1 sack going into this game. They finished with 4 sacks. Poor Hudson Card. He had negative 42 rushing yards. If you had the over on his 14.5 rushing yards going into this game, I'm sorry. Didn't really come close to it. Although going into the game, I probably would have said that's a good bet to take, but that was not the case in this game. He ended up finishing 11 of 24 passing, 124 passing yards, and a touchdown. And I'm not going to lie to you, I was pretty annoyed that Purdue scored a touchdown. I didn't feel like they deserved it. They got that big chunk passing play when Notre Dame had all of their backups in, and they ended up scoring on that drive. And it was pretty funny just watching that play out. Like, if you're a Purdue player and you score in that moment, like, what does it even feel like? You were down 42-0 at halftime. Your fans are booing you off the field. Like, is it even fun to celebrate? Like, yeah, cool. And then you just go back to hell and like, yeah, we're still getting thoroughly dominated. So I was annoyed they scored a touchdown. I wanted Notre Dame to get a shutout in this game. And I really stand on my point that I made earlier that if Notre Dame kept their starters in, Purdue was not going to get over 100 total yards of offense. Like, it just was not happening in this game. But Notre Dame played their backups the entire second half. And honestly, good for them because a lot of guys got some real looks out there, and they were playing their same defense and offense. They were running the same offense. So the backups got a lot of run in this game, and I think that's going to be good for them down the line. But when I look at the starting unit, I was particularly impressed by the defensive line in this one. Howard Cross looked like Howard Cross again. That was great. He actually didn't even really do much at all on the stat sheet, but you could tell his presence was felt. He was getting in the backfield. Also, Riley Mills looked really disruptive. He basically set up the pick 6 for Bubakar Traore because he was getting after Hudson Card on the play. And when those guys play well, it just sets up everything else for this Notre Dame defense because when they're getting in the backfield, when they're wreaking havoc on the line of scrimmage there, then like teams don't really have an answer for them. And we already know that Notre Dame is probably going to have an advantage with their secondary going up against any wide receivers left on the schedule. And yeah, the linebackers are mostly young with the exception of Jack Kaiser, and they still need to make improvements, but they're their lives are made a lot easier when Howard Cross and Riley Mills are dominating, and they looked much better in this game. Again, they didn't really do much on the stat sheet because they only played one half, but they looked a lot better. Jordan Botelho had a sack early, which is even more unfortunate that he left the game with an injury. But this was a big breakout game for Boubacar Traore. Notre Dame is going to need him a lot the rest of this season because he's likely going to be starting the rest of the way at the Viper position. And that was the type of performance that's going to give him confidence the rest of the way. He came in, he showed out, he had that pick six. It was a great moment, but it wasn't just that. I thought he was bringing it on every single play in the game as well. The linebackers as a whole looked like they did against Texas A&M. Jack Kaiser looked like Jack Kaiser. He was just forcing all kinds of issues for the Purdue offense in this one. And then Jalen Sneed, who in my opinion had the hit of the game on defense. Give Bryce Young the credit for the most violent hit of the game on, I think it was Purdue's second kickoff return. The guy got it, and the lead blocker for him just got absolutely annihilated by Bryce Young. I mean, he's 6'7", 250 plus pounds, running full speed down the field. Like, that is literally a car accident out there. Just tossed the dude. I was so annoyed that CBS did not show the replay of that because it was like, you heard the opposing crowd go, ooh, as soon as it happened, and I saw it. And I think it happened so quickly and the camera went off it that a lot of people missed it. But I think the clip was kind of circulating on Twitter, so I'm glad more people could see it. But we also got to give some love to the hit that Jalen Sneed made across the middle. Purdue tried to run a crossing route. The guy caught it, and Sneed just leveled him. He didn't even have a running start. He was basically stationary, just took 1 foot, lowered his shoulder, drilled the dude, ball popped out, but they rolled it an incomplete pass. And it's like when he's making plays like that, I think that's the type of player that we all expected to see with Jalen Sneed. He looked a lot more in control in this game, so I was happy to see him bounce back. Secondary, Benjamin Morrison gave up one catch early, and that was that for the rest of the day. Benjamin Morrison is so good now that when he allows a catch, I'm genuinely like shocked, right? And I know that, these guys are running routes constantly on these corners. Eventually, they're going to win a couple reps for sure. But Benjamin Morrison just has such a dominant presence about him that when someone beats him, especially on a slant like that, where he just beat Benjamin Morrison off the line, had a nice explosive cut, got a little physical there, but it wasn't a flag. He made the catch on a slant. I was like, whoa, Benjamin Morrison gave up a catch. That didn't happen the rest of the game. Christian Gray could have had a pick six as well. He dropped it. That was maybe the only downside for the Notre Dame secondary other than the big chunk passing play that they had against the second team unit. But they played great. And for all the concerns we might still have about the offense, I feel more confident about this defense than I did before. Defense travels, it translates, and I think that this is going to be a big performance that they can build on the rest of the way, because when they're getting in the backfield and they're wreaking all that havoc for their opponent's quarterbacks, like, it's over. No one's going to be able to move the ball on this Notre Dame defense if they're able to do what they did on Saturday, particularly on the defensive line. And look, the loss of Jordan Botelho stings, but seeing Howard Cross look healthy, Riley Mills play like himself, that's massive for this team. And the defense was always going to carry the way for this team. And if they're able to execute like this, that's just going to allow the offense more time to get things back on track. And I also think that this defense is so good that they're going to create more turnovers against these teams. Like, they haven't had as much luck early on in the season, but I think they're starting to get a little bit more, and they're going to create that themselves by bringing all these different pressures and show all kinds of different looks that these teams aren't ready for. Like, I can't believe that Purdue basically had 9 months to prepare for this game, because they played Indiana State week 1, which was a joke. They won that game like 49-0. Then they had a bye week 2. So they had all this time to come up with all kinds of new stuff to beat Notre Dame, and they just had nothing. They had no answer for Notre Dame from the very beginning of the game. That's one thing that Northern Illinois did have. They had a lot of time to prepare for Notre Dame, and that showed. They showed Notre Dame a bunch of different looks they had not seen before, and I felt like going into this game, Notre Dame matched up well, particularly with their defense going up against Purdue's offense, because Purdue likes to spread it out, try to attack you through the air, and that's the thing that Notre Dame's defense is best at. They have one of the best secondaries in the entire country, and that was on full display in this one, as they just completely shut them down from the outset. And the backups looked really good as well. Jason Onye's had to take more of an increased role with the injury to Josh Burnham and the fact that R.J. Oben hasn't really performed like we had thought he would. He finished the game with 4 tackles, 1 sack and a half. Leonard Moore, the backup cornerback, true freshman, had 27 snaps in this game. They targeted him 1 time. He did not allow a reception, so that's really good. I mean, the hype around him in preseason camp was high. And even though he's not going to play much so long as Benjamin Morrison and Christian Gray are healthy, the future for him is really, really bright. And we started to see a little bit more of that on Saturday. Then there's Kennedy Urlacher, another true freshman who I admit I didn't love as a recruit. I was like, yeah, I know the last name. I know who his dad is, but like he's undersized and he's a bit slow to be a safety. Like, could he really be an impact player for Notre Dame? And then in one of the press conferences during preseason camp, Jordan Clark said that he thought that Kennedy Urlacher was going to be a future first rounder, that he hits everything that moves, and that he had all this potential and that he was showing out every day in practice. And I was like, what? A first rounder? I don't know about all that. And I still don't know about all of that. But man, he looked really good when he was out there. He's very violent. He obviously doesn't look like his dad because he's not as big. He doesn't play linebacker, but he does hit like his dad. And even though he was out there for limited action, 23 snaps, he was the second highest graded player on PFF. And I understand that PFF grades can, they aren't always super reliable, but I thought that was really interesting. He looked really good out there. Luke Talich had some nice plays as well. The depth of this group is really, really impressive. And we saw that on full display when they just ran out their second team unit and basically just picked up where they left off. Yes, they gave up that touchdown, but they also created a turnover when Kingston Viliamoasa got an interception that honestly should have been a pick six, but he got tackled by his shoelaces. That was a little bit disappointing because I thought that'd be so cool if he ended up getting a pick six in that game as well. But hats off to the defense. That was an incredible performance. Notre Dame needs to play like that. I mean, I don't know if you can expect a performance exactly like that every single week. That might not be attainable, but that was a great bounce back performance from them, and I think that is going to carry the way throughout the rest of this season. Notre Dame needs that defense to dominate. They dominated in this one. I think they're going to dominate a lot more in the rest of this season. Unfortunately, it wasn't all good news for the Irish against Purdue. The Irish did suffer some key injuries that will test their depth at some very important positions. That's next on Locked On Irish. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard me talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you today. So now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. So you only have about a week left for this offer, but with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. I honestly cannot recommend this enough. I've been a YouTube TV user for years. It is great. It's affordable. And the Sunday Ticket option makes it even better. Like, what's better than watching your favorite team play every Sunday? The ability to tune in to every other game you want to watch and check in on your fantasy team to make sure that they're going to get the win, just like your favorite team. Football season is here, folks. I'm so excited. And FanDuel allows you to get in on the action like never before. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. For all the good things that happened for Notre Dame on Saturday, we do have to address the 3 injuries to starters that Notre Dame suffered in this game, and each one is very important. But let's start with Jordan Botelho. This is such a bummer. Man, he was in the backfield going after Hudson Card, and he rounded him, and then he just went down and immediately started holding his knee, and you knew it was bad. Non-contact injury, the way he went down, the fact that they immediately brought out the cart onto the field. And you could just tell from the reaction from the team. He knew, they knew, it's something serious. And odds are we are not going to see Jordan Botelho the rest of the season. And that might be the end of his career. I don't want to get too down in the dumps here, but this is his last year of eligibility. Now, if he decides, if he medically redshirts, he could come back next year for a 6th year. I don't know if he wants to do that, just given how long he's been in South Bend and how his career has been so up and down. But it was just such a bummer because he was finally putting it together. The early parts of his career, we've talked about this before on the podcast, it was not going well for Jordan Botelho. Brian Kelly sent him home at one point, and even when he came back, he hadn't matured like Brian Kelly had probably hoped for, but at this point in his career, he had matured, he was eating right, he was doing all the right things, and you could see that on the field in his performance. He was Notre Dame's best defensive lineman in the game against Texas A&M. He had 3 tackles and 1 sack in this game in very limited action, and football is just such a cruel game sometimes, and this was just another example of that. Boubacar Traore said that he told Botelho when he was on the cart that everything that Traore does the rest of the season is for him, and I think the way that the team reacted there, they just felt so bad for Jordan Botelho, and this is definitely a big blow to the Notre Dame defensive line and the defense as a whole because he was becoming a really, really consistent player for this group. Plus, he's been around. He's a 5th year. He's a grown man on that defensive line, and that's going to be a big loss for Notre Dame going forward. Notre Dame also lost Billy Schrauth in this one. He got rolled up on the line of scrimmage, left the game, and then showed back up on the sideline after he went to the locker room. He had his leg, like foot, ankle area in a cast, and I'm not going to speculate about the severity of his injury because by the time you're listening to this, we might have official word. Marcus Freeman is expected to have his normal weekly press conference on Monday at noon Eastern, so I'm sure he's going to have an official update for Strouth, Craig, and Botello. I guess the good thing here, we don't know, but the cast was on his ankle and it wasn't on his knee. Like at first it looked like a bad knee injury, so we're going to see what happens with Billy Strouth, but going into this season, Marcus Freeman said that one player who he expected to break out was Billy Strouth. He was having a good start to the year, so him going down would be a big, big blow for this group. Rocco Spindler came in off the bench to replace him, and I thought Rocco played really, really well. He actually graded out the highest of any Notre Dame offensive lineman on PFF, and as we know, Rocco Spindler actually won the right guard spot last year in fall camp. Started 10 games, and he got hurt against Clemson. That's when Billy Strouth came in. There was no competition for that right guard spot. This year, Billy Strouth had it going away, but Notre Dame is very fortunate that they could bring in a backup who's already had 10 career starts. And they could also bring in a backup with experience at center as well because Notre Dame lost Ashton Craig in this one. This one is really tough. I will say that Ashton Craig's injury looked a little bit better than Billy Strouth's. Like, Ashton Craig was able to walk off the field mostly on his own power, but still we don't know. He went down awkwardly. It could be a knee, and he's the catalyst on this offensive line. He looks like a future All-American. They need him out there. There's a chance he could be captain. Like, the reason that Notre Dame told Zeke Correll that he can just move on after his fifth season was because they had more belief in Ashton Craig going forward. There's a lot of talk about him going into the season. He had played well up to this point, and at this point, I don't really know what the severity of the Craig injury is. Like I said, we're going to find out later today what's the deal with all three of these guys. I'm almost certain that Jordan Botello is going to be out for the year. With Strouth and Craig, I don't know for sure, but my guess is they are both going to be out for an extended period of time. We're going to have to just wait and see for the official word. But how can Notre Dame make up for these losses? On the offensive line, they have Pat Coogan coming in at center, who started every single game last season at left guard. So he has 13 career starts. And as I mentioned, Rocco Spindler has 10 career starts at right guard. So it's not going to be a massive, massive drop-off, I think. But you got to look at the group as a whole now, right? They lost Charles Jagasaw, who's going to be their starting left tackle. Now they lost their center and their right guard. So right now they have 3 guys out of 5 on that unit who are backups. And that's not a good place to be. And Notre Dame already had concerns about their offensive line going into the season. They've not played that well up to this point, although they played really well against Purdue. But again, Purdue was terrible. So this is going to be really interesting to follow the rest of the way. They can survive with this group. If there's not another injury and Notre Dame goes out with Knapp, Pendleton, Coogan, Spindler, and Emil Wagner the rest of the way, I think they can get by with that group. It's not going to be great all the time. There's certainly going to be some highs and lows along the way. But that group is good enough. The problem is that Notre Dame has only played 3 games. They have a lot more football left to be played. And if one more guy gets hurt at any position, things could go south in a hurry. Because, yeah, Notre Dame has depth. They've recruited well on the offensive line. But no team in the country is going to be able to handle 4 injuries to their starters. Like, you don't want to be running the entire backup unit out there, and Notre Dame is getting dangerously close to having to do that. So I am very concerned about the offensive line, which isn't anything new. I was concerned about the offensive line all offseason and throughout the season up to this point, but that is definitely something to monitor the rest of the way. And on defense, losing Botello is really a tough blow. He's been really good against the run. He's also been getting after the quarterback as well. And now Boubacar Traore is going to ask to step in there and make some plays. He looked really good out there against Purdue, but his development is going to have to speed up a little bit. Marcus Freeman said after the game that he is a good player. He needs to be a great player, and I think he's on the way to becoming a great player, but he's going to have to do that in a hurry because Notre Dame really needs him at that Viper position to step up. We also might see more of true freshman Bryce Young, even though he's more of a strong side end. I'm interested to see if Notre Dame is going to start moving guys around. They have Miami of Ohio this week, then Louisville, then a bye, so maybe they'll look more into it in the bye week, but now that they've lost a critical piece and Howard Cross is back fully healthy, it might allow them some more freedom to move some guys around. But I think the main thing is that Boubacar Traore really has to step up. Junior Tui Alamaka, who is the third-string Viper, has been somewhat of a forgotten player ever since he moved over from linebacker to Viper. But when Notre Dame got him as a big-time recruit, he's going to have to step up and play a bigger role now because Notre Dame is going to need to rotate these guys on the defensive line so that they don't sustain more injuries to that front. And when you look at the 3 injuries in totality, like they really suck. There's no way around it. There's no way I could positively spin losing 2 of your starting offensive linemen and your starting defensive end all in one half of football. Like, it's kind of crazy that Notre Dame went up 42-0 and they were losing starters. They were dropping like flies at one point. That was a really weird sequence. I don't remember a half like that where so many key players just went down with significant injuries. So that's a huge bummer. It does happen in football. Usually it's at least spaced out across a few different games, but Notre Dame's depth is going to be tested. And even though they've recruited well, the more that these injuries pile up, eventually it's going to really impact the team. You think back to 2015 Notre Dame, that team was loaded, but every single week it felt like a new starter was going down with a season-ending injury. And they were able to get by throughout most of the season, but finally they hit a breaking point at the end of the year, ended up losing to Stanford because they had like Devin Butler out there at cornerback, and he was just not that good of a player in college because I think Kavari Russell just broke his leg. Like, there were just so many injuries that happened that season, and I think it derailed the potential of that group. I'm not saying that's going to happen in Notre Dame, but 3 starting players going out in one half is not good, and now they have to hope that they can stay healthy the rest of the way. They actually had been pretty fortunate health-wise up until this point. I mean, obviously losing Charles Jagusah in camp isn't ideal, but they were doing okay throughout the start of the season. Now they need some of that good fortune to come back in a big way because that was a rough half of football, not in terms of the scoreboard, but in terms of the team and the future outlook. That was not great. But I don't want to end on a negative note because there was so much positives from this game. I'm so glad that we were able to enjoy a fun, stress-free Saturday. Luke Smith texted me before the game. He's like, I just want a stress-free game. And I told him, I don't even know if that's possible with this group. Well, it turns out it is. Notre Dame dominated this one from beginning to end. They won 66-7 against a Big Ten team. And yeah, I know that they were predicted to finish last in the Big Ten, but still 66-7 is no small feat. It was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed the game. And even though I understand a lot of you are still probably very frustrated about the Northern Illinois game, I get it. I am too. But look, man, we don't have that many Saturdays where we can watch this team and enjoy it. We got that on Saturday. I think we're going to have a lot more down the road. And I was nervous after the Northern Illinois game. I was like, man, is this season going to go off the rails? I was like, is this even going to be fun? Well, I think Saturday proved that one thing is true. This team can be really fun. Are they frustrating? Yes. Do they have a lot to figure out? Absolutely. But they could be really fun. Okay, and Saturday was a lot of fun. Let's hope they can string some more fun Saturdays together. All right, that's going to do it for me today. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish your first listen of the day. I'm going to be right back here tomorrow morning with Luke Smith to share our final thoughts on the Purdue game. Then I'm going to switch gears to the Miami of Ohio game, and I'm hopefully going to have a new guest on this week as well that I'm excited about. Still getting that worked out, so stay tuned for that. Please subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Also remember to check out the Locked On College Football podcast, and I will see you tomorrow.